Hi everyone, it's Adam7 Fish Tanks, and in today's video we're setting up this Fluval Premium Betta kit. This was kindly sent out to me recently by Fluval, as you've probably seen in my unboxing video. That'll also be linked in the description below. And yeah, we're going to be setting up this tank for a betta fish, so let's crack on with scaping it. So the first bit of action we're going to be doing is taking this light off. And we're going to be taking the lid off too, so we can access the inside of the tank. So the first thing we're adding to the tank today is some Nutri base. Now this is our source of nutrients for our root feeding plants to feed off, and then we'll be capping that off with a substrate system. So let's crack on with adding that into the tank. Now the thing is with this stuff, you don't want to be doing loads of it, as at the end of the day it is your source of nutrients, but also if you have too much nutrients it could end up being the root cause of your algae too, so we don't want to overdo it. So I think that is more than plenty than we need for this tank. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use our aquascaping tool here to brush it across and spread it across the bottom of the tank, and we will be capping this off with gravel, so we'll crack onto that in a moment's time. The next step for us is to add our substrate system, and I would like to thank our friends at Aquatics today for supplying us with the hardscape and substrate for our tank today. They kindly gifted us these when we went round and filmed their warehouse recently, so make sure to check out their website for any aquascaping and hardscape goods, so make sure to check them out. This is more like a fine gravel, it isn't a large surface area, it's very minute as to speak, and you can see there it's more like grains, fine grains and granules, so this is going to look ideal for the type of look we're doing today. Right, so let's crack on with adding our gravel into the tank. Now like I was saying to you, the idea is by using this I'm going to be capping off our substrate layer underneath, so I'm going to be putting a fair amount of this into the tank. And I think that is plenty, half a bag as to say. Just going to remove some of this because half of the bag basically went into the tank then, and that was far too much. I did say that we needed a capping layer, but we definitely didn't need an entire bag of gravel on top. So I'm just removing 2 scoops of this, and I think that'll be more than enough to remove. So now I'm just going to brush this back, make sure that it's capping off the underneath substrate system. Just going to brush that back to build up that hill. I'm basically building a hill in the corner. So as you can see, there's a bit of a hill built up in the left hand corner there. That's the effect I'm wanting, and it's a lot more shallow to the right hand side. So yeah, I'm going to crack on now with adding our hardscape. You're probably wondering, what hardscape are we using today? Now we've got this really cool piece of wood. I believe this is a type of spider wood maybe, or a kind of root wood. Really nice. I have rinsed this and made sure it's clean. However, we are probably going to have to glue this down as it is pretty light, and I've got a good feeling it may float. We are also using today Dragonstone. I haven't used in one of my own personal aquascapes before. I've used it in friends' tanks, I've used it for customers' tanks. But yeah, if you don't know, Dragonstone consists of a clay base formation. So this is dried up clay essentially. And what I've done is I've pre-rinsed it beforehand, as if you don't know, if you haven't used Dragonstone before, it can get quite dirty, it can create a bit of a mess and break down easily. So you got to be careful of that when you're setting up your scapes, as you're going to have cloudy water for a fair bit of time if you don't give this a rinse. Right, so we're going to place our wood in first and sit it in this corner. I've got a bit of a brief idea in my head on how I want it to look. Probably thinking on doing that in a bit like that maybe. It is kind of sticking out the tank, which isn't ideal. I'm thinking I might have to saw off a piece of wood, unfortunately, but we can make this work. So we're going to saw a piece off. It was sticking into where the lid would be, and we want to make sure that the lid is flush. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to cut a piece off, which is a bit heartbreaking, but at the end of the day, we've got to make it fit. I think that's in deep enough for me to snap it. There we are, snapped. I've snapped it because I want it to look a bit more natural than just a clean cut. Yeah, as you can see, it was clean cut initially. I'm just gonna peel a bit off there. There you go, that looks a bit more natural now. Right, moments of truth. Let's see if this wood fits in the tank. It just should do according to the measurements I did. And that seems to be flush. Let's try the lid. Might need to reposition it a bit more. The lid's sitting flush, but I've got a feeling that there's some branches that may be keeping the wood a little too high up, so I'm just going to break a couple off. Right, so as you can see, the lid is now flush. I have wiggled it about enough, and the lid is not riding the top of the wood either, which is good. So we can finally move on to adding our rocks in. So I'm going to add our dragonstone in now. We've got some nice pieces here that we're going to be adding into the tank. Now we haven't got an awful lot of space, so it might be a case that we might have to break these down and scatter them around, but we'll maneuver things about and see how it looks. We've got some bits and bobs from breaking apart the rock, so we're going to scatter that in now for finer detail. Right, so now that the scape's complete, what we're going to do now is we're going to use these little cotton pads, or you can use cotton wool balls, break them up, stuff them in between the crevices of the rock and wood, and then glue them down. So this is a way to bond the wood and rock together, so then it'll be one solid piece, and then the likelihood of the wood floating will be a lot less than what it would be without it being glued down. Right, so it's time to break this apart. Just little pieces and tufts, just small enough so we can whack a dabble of glue on. Bit of glue onto this now. Use our tweezers and stick it in between the rock and the wood. And then what we'll do to make sure that is covered up so we're not seeing any of that is just add a bit of gravel on top, and that way then it looks part of the scenery. Time for the moment of truth. Let's see if the glue is set. And it seems to be quite solid. So the next step is planting. We have our carpeting plant or mid-ground plant. This is going to be Monte Carlo. We're going to plant that in between the little crevices. We have a lot, and I mean a lot, of Anubias nana here. And I think there's another species mixed in there, and that's going to do really good. It's going to do great. I'm going to plant that in between the rocks and the wood. And then finally our background plant being Hygrophila Polysperma. So let's crack on with planting. Let's start off with the Monte Carlo. So Monte Carlo is a great carpeting plant. You can also attach it to wood and rocks too, but in this case we're going to be planting it in between little crevices. So I'm just going to break it up. As you can see, the root structure is quite small and delicate, so I'm just going to break it into little segments that we will plant around the hardscape. Right, next up, and probably going to be the easiest part, is planting the Hygrophila Polysperma. So this is a stem plant, and once again, quite an easy growing one. So we're going to be planting this into the back section. It's always important that you want to make sure that your plants aren't drying out. So I'm just hosing them down with the spray bottle right now, making sure that they're not drying out. So the next plant that we're using is Anubias. Now we've got a ton of it right here. As you can see, some nice healthy Anubias. So we're going to break it apart right now, and we're going to stick it in crevices and gaps. Right, so we're now finished scaping. We've planted the tank, we've added our hardscape and our substrate system. So it's now time to fill the tank up, and it is ready for water. Hi everyone, so I'm at Maidenhead Blackpool today and I'm going to be picking up a male betta for my Betta Escape, so let's crack on with that. So yeah, the shop had a really good variety of betta fish in stock, mainly placats. All the long fins were sold out and they were coming in the week after, but that's okay as I personally prefer plakat bettas anyway. As you can see, just before I introduced the betta, we got some red root floating plants. These were kindly gifted to me by Fish Shop Matt when I went to Aqua recently. Here's just a sneak peek of our betta, just before I show you this cool feature. So yeah, we've introduced our betta fish now. The tank's been set up for a fair bit of time. I'm just going to show you now the automatic water change feature, which is a part of the Fluval betta kit, and I'll show you how that works just now. Right, so all you need to do simply is just pop this little part up here, turn it over here, and it starts to trickle into the bucket. As you can see as well, it's just a nice gentle feature. It uses the pump that pushes the water out of the filtration section of the tank. So it's a nice gentle trickle flow, so it's not draining right away down rapidly, disturbing anything in your tank. And yeah, I think it's a really cool feature. It's now time to add our fresh water into the tank. Of course, I've added some dechlorinator and I'm pouring it onto my hand as I don't want to disturb anything down below and mess up the substrate system or uproot any plants. And here we are with the finished tank. Really happy with how it's turned out and the selection of betta too. I was quite fortunate to be able to have a little browse of Maidenhead Blackpool and see the different bettas that they had available, but this is the one that I settled on, as it's stunning and quite unique with a bit of a blue shimmer on its tail, and it's got that red coloration which reminds me of the first ever betta fish I kept in the hobby. I'm now going to leave you with some B-roll footage of the betta in the tank, so thanks for watching everyone. I'll see you in the next video. Take care, bye bye.